Thursday afternoon, it's 4 p.m. in Central Europe, and it's Space Café WebTalk time. Our Space Café WebTalk 33 minutes with Amna Al Owais will begin very soon. Thanks for joining us for our talk today about Courts of Space, a conversation about dispute resolutions. As always, we appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback. As you know, SpaceWatch.Global is a Europe-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. And I would like to thank all our private and corporate supporters that showed their commitment to keeping our independent journalism alive. We really appreciate that. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, the bi-weekly and the daily newsletters, and our Space Café podcast. The last one, which was released last week, featured Anne Ansland of Trust Me about her vision of our future in space. And we also have new super exciting episodes in the Space Café radio, you know, the short ones, the sandbox, when we are on the road. And for instance, with Jim Bridenstine, I spoke in Lausanne, and more to come. We also keep our fan shop open online for you to support us actively to become a space watcher. And if you've missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the events section and on YouTube. So, in one of our white label Space Café series about space arbitration by Laura Zielinski, we hosted today's guest a while back. And she impressed our audience by her charisma, her drive, and her motivation. I thought she's a perfect guest for our 33 minutes. With that, a very warm welcome today to the Space Café, Amna Al Owais. So to introduce you to our audience, it's just a snippet of her very, very impressive bio. Amna is currently the Chief Registrar at the DIFC Courts and oversees operations and quality management, supervising the courts. It's so hard word. Judicial officers and registry personnel, as well as the delivery of the comprehensive suite of court public services. She also spearheads special projects across DIFC Courts operations, particularly in the field of technology and innovation, harnessing digital transformation for core court services, including a major partnership project across blockchain with Smart Dubai and a court tech R&D initiative with the Dubai Future Foundation. In addition to her role as a Chief Registrar at the DIFC Courts, Amna is also a Registrar of the Special Tribunal related to Dubai World, Chairwoman of the DIFC Courts User Committee, Chairwoman of the DIFC Courts In-House Counsel Committee, and a member of the Consulting Council of the University of Sharjah College of Law. In 2014, Amna was appointed to the Advisory Board of the International Bar Association's Access to Justice and Legal Aid Committee. Again, these were just a few minutes of her impressive bio, and she is really an absolute role model in the work she does. With that, welcome again, Amna. So, let's kick it off. Before we start into our subject today, please tell us more about you. What's your story and what brought you in the space sector?
First of all, thank you so much, Torsten, for having me today. I was very excited when I received your invitation to be part of Space Café, and I really look forward to today's engaging discussion. So a little bit about me. Thank you for, again, your introduction, and sorry that it was a bit longer than usual. So I've been, part of the DIFC Courts, and to people who don't know what DIFC stands for, it's the Dubai International Financial Center. And within this jurisdiction, we have a special court. So I come from the DIFC court. And my background is within law. I've been practicing as a lawyer in the UAE. So I come from the United Arab Emirates, from Dubai specifically. And I've been practicing earlier on for a very short time until the DIFC courts told me, and I've been with the DIFC courts for nearly 16 years. And to be honest, there was never a dull moment I was very fortunate to be part of the whole development of the courts from day one. So as you mentioned, I'm part of the special projects. I oversee special projects, the operations, and the registries within the DIFC courts. And we have so many special projects, including the Courts of Space initiative, which we'll be talking about today together.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So in my promotion video, I stated what will legally happen if a spacecraft is hit by another one space object. And that is the rationale for the why, I guess. So why is there a need to establish a court system, especially dedicated to the commercial disputes related to space?
So you hit it on the nail. So it is really important to know why we exist. Some people wonder, why do they have in the UAE the special court that practices in common law systems and an English-speaking court? So we, in the early days, when the leadership of Dubai decided to create this financial free zone, they actually did a huge type of amount of research that actually went around the world to see why certain stakeholders were never coming to the UAE and Dubai. And one of the main requirements for such international institutions, the financial sector, the commercial, let's say, companies and investors, they were really keen on having a familiar system and a language that they can understand. And that is why the DIFC court was created based on the common law system and English speaking. It is a court that operates a friendly, let's say, mechanism, a really attractive jurisdiction for parties when choosing us in their contracts. The DIFC court is an opt-in jurisdiction. And what it means is that any two parties, in simple terms, let's say two contractors, maybe from the space industry, choosing within their contract the dispute resolution clause, they can choose the DIFC court, and they can choose any law that they wish to have their contract basically interpreted on. And within the DIFC courts, we're a jurisdiction that is very friendly, neutral, and attractive. And that is why we believe operating in the English system, English language, common law is such a huge attractiveness to operate within the DIFC courts and choose us as a choice of court, as a forum of choice. And some people might confuse us with other types of dispute resolution. In dispute resolution, you have many different types. So you have litigation. So we are a pure court system like other court system that has judges that are appointed by the government, by the ruler. And you have, of course, other mechanisms such as arbitration, mediation, and negotiation, and the list goes on. So we are a court system. And the reason why we were created is to provide the security and the mechanism that parties or business stakeholders require within the jurisdiction here, especially in the UAE.
You answered my next question already about what is the jurisdiction of the Court of Space, but is it also open to international companies based all over the world? Because, I mean, sure, there is a space industry or an upcoming space industry in the UAE, but is it open to others? So let's say an Intelsat or has a problem with someone else. Yeah.
So I'll give you a bit of background. So
yes,
in the DIFC court, we're open to the world as long as they choose us in writing. So in the agreement, when they do the contract, the heavy lifting, I would say, in terms of drafting the contract, they need to remember if they want a court like our court. So that is the first test. And it needs to be a commercial or civil transaction. So, of course, space industry has a lot of commercial dealings and transactions. Hence, any two parties, whether space-related players or any two parties, any two individuals, any two businesses, whether one business, one individual, you name it, as long as it's a commercial transaction, they can choose the DIFC court, whether within the UAE or abroad. So we are really open to the world. The test and the condition is not to forget to write us in the contract, whether before or after the dispute.
I see. again, why Dubai? Aren't classical places, The Hague, Paris, New York, this I mean, seen for this kind of initiatives? But why now Dubai? To establish yourself as a new player in this field, or what is behind it?
So of course, we cannot forget, the main landmarks of, justice systems, the leading jurisdictions such as the ones you mentioned, The Hague, New York, the UK. These are leading jurisdictions and, let's say, dispute resolution. But of course, the world evolves and develops, and every day we find a new cities, a new jurisdictions, and each has their, let's say, specialities, and each has their, let's say, special ingredients. And as you know, Dubai and the UAE is always a leader in government, let's say, developments, evolution. And us as a court, we follow that trend. And we always enjoy being, let's say, at the forefront of other, let's say, jurisdictions and commercial courts that focus on always providing the best services. So I did not mention earlier the aspect that within the DIFC courts, our strategies, our work plans always evolve around four main pillars. Judicial excellence, we believe we have more than 300 years of experience if we count all of the judges' experiences that we have that come from different parts of the world, including the UAE. We have service excellence. Service excellence is how we operate as a service delivery oriented, as a customer-centric court. And we are one of the first courts in the world that had mystery shoppers. Since we are an opt-in jurisdiction as a forum of choice, we really need to have the best services, a 5-star service. Third is our connectivity, let's say, exercises with different jurisdictions, how we actually focus on cooperating with other judicial systems and also the private and public sector, because we believe since we are a choice, we need to have best relations with other jurisdictions to make sure, knowledge sharing is there, enforcement mechanisms are always bulletproof. And last but not least is our innovation pillar. And innovation, of course, can come with technology or any creative ideas that can support any economy or any community. So within innovation, we believe, first of all, creativity can be without technology. However, we within the DIFC courts, we use technology as an enabler for our success and our development. And you might wonder why I'm talking about all of this since we're talking about space today. I just want to give some perspective how the Courts of Space initiatives came about. So in 2017, with our partner, the Dubai Future Foundation, we launched the Courts of the Future initiative alongside World Economic Forum Future Councils. And at the time, we thought, why not? Why not talk about the future today? Why wait until the future comes to us? So back in 2017, we started thinking about what would be future disputes, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, you name it. And at the time, the rules or the draft principle that really focused on such future disputes was called Part 40,000. And 40,000, you might wonder, why did we call it 40,000? And if you look at the rules of the DIFC court today, we barely reached Part 58 as we speak. But at the time, we thought, 40,000 is very futuristic. But there's another twist. If you check, and I'm sure you know better than me, in space, 40,000 is the speed of any object that requires to leave or exit the court. That's not the court, the Earth's orbit. So 40,000 kilometers per hour is how much speed that any object needs to exit the Earth's orbit. So at the time, I personally, with the team, we had the spark. One day we might make it to space. And as the Courts of the Future continued its initiatives, its unique ideas, whether Court Tech Lab, whether Courts of the Blockchain, etc., we decided in 2021 to create the Courts of Space. So Courts of Space, you might wonder why the timing. As you see, of course, the UAE has played a huge role in space industry for the last 5 or maybe 7 years even. We had our first Emirati astronaut, Mars mission, and all that actually gave us the boost and inspiration to be part of the journey. And within the DIFC court, we actually hear any commercial dispute, including space, even before having Courts of Space initiative. But you know what? We thought it's about time to listen, to get feedback, and have the community from the space industry tune in and tap in and see what exactly we can offer them as a new stakeholder, as a new, let's say, target audience. And that is what we were able to achieve in the last 2 years. We're still, let's say, maybe still toddlers in this area of space, but we believe that we are experts in dispute resolution of courts and how we evolve as a court, and we're learning from partners and stakeholders like yours.
I found it very interesting when you say you still feel like toddlers in this market, because I haven't seen any other country which is so rapidly developing within a few decades, and I'm had the great honor to eyewitness a number of the developments, including the space sector, from the Al Owais Sat 1 to, as you said, the Mars mission, or the, I mean, you can say an astronaut corps. It's not just a single one. But coming back to the DIFC Courts and the initiative you just mentioned, so can you go a little bit deeper into what are the initial key goals you want to achieve with that?
Yes, thank you, Torsten. So when we launched the space disputes, or let's say the space of courts within the DIFC court back in February 2021, we actually just a few months ago, we had our first anniversary. We had few outputs. The first was to have international members to the working group of the Courts of Space initiative. And we're very lucky to have 16 members on our working group that span from different backgrounds, whether academia, for example, commercial institutes, and of course, agencies from around the world, space agencies. So we're very fortunate, and even some lawyers who have expertise in space. So that was number one. So we created the working group. We started having meetings, although it is very challenging since half of them come from different jurisdictions and different time zones. It is quite challenging, but with challenge, excitement also occurs. So different jurisdictions, different people, and of course, they're all passionate about making this difference and how we can play together the betterment of, let's say, dispute resolution, at least as far as courts are concerned. The second aspect that we worked on is the Space Disputes Guide. As you mentioned, most probably most of the players of the space industry go to arbitration. And we know that arbitration is a confidential, let's say, forum. A forum that deals with cases that come from space industry, and no one really knows what happens. It's all within closed doors. So we were really looking for how we can show our new stakeholders, our target audience, how us as the DIFC Courts, Courts of Space, can play a role in attracting them to this neutral jurisdiction, to the safe harbor. So we decided with the Space Disputes Guide, we issued edition number 1 in 2021. And it actually talks about different scenarios. It's actually quite fascinating. It's such a unique design that is very sci-fi, very futuristic. And it focuses on the different scenarios of disputes that might happen on space. And if there were to have these disputes, how they will be operated within the DIFC court. So very simple, we showcase to the, let's say, the world or our target audience, how the case from space will actually span out within the DIFC court's procedures. And as we speak, we are working on edition number 2 of the Space Disputes Guide. And now we are hoping to dive into more of sci-fi types of dispute. Let's say what happens on Mars Valley, if there's an investment there. What happens if people are, let's say, having a holiday in one of the hotels there and they end up having an issue with maybe some, let's say, inhabitants of Mars, maybe aliens. So the idea is Space Disputes Guide number 2 will actually have more context to how space disputes might be in the future. Of course, we will not really just focus on the classical types of, let's say, disputes, like, let's say, two satellites crashing into each other, but we'll focus more on really how will life look like in space, and more from a commercial side of things, how transactions might end up in space, and if there was a dispute, how we can sort it out. And we always say our idea of having a court, at least our court, is really to protect businesses and their needs. And we always think of us like a doctor. So you know that you have a really good doctor, but you never want to go to the doctor, right? So the same idea with the DIFC courts, including its multiple initiatives, the idea is just to show the world that there's the safe harbor. You have the security that you need, especially since space transactions sometimes involve huge amount of money. The idea is if you need us, you come to the courts. If not, you know that you have the peace of mind that there's a court system like us that can serve you when needed. Even within our court, let's say, a system, our overriding objective is actually to promote settlement. Even if parties end up with us, we always have the efforts of how we can bring the parties together and have the business relationship survive.
Wow. I mean, at least it sounds you have really fun with your work and the topics you challenge yourself with. Did I understood right? The working group that you established is working on these issues, or not issues, on these documents, on these guidelines. Is that what they do?
So the working group is more of a think tank. So
Okay.
it's more of thought leadership. Of course, some of them are very, let's say, generous, and they do offer us the assistance, the help back and forth on ad hoc, let's say, examples. And actually, one main aspect, the third, let's say, output of the courts of space is actually training. So the working group has been very generous with us, that they've actually provided us with a series of training on the space, let's say, subject, let's say the international treaties, the different protocols. So we've had at least more than 7 sessions that's been provided by our working group. So they've been doing it on a pro bono basis, so that we as a court, our staff, our judges, get more understanding about the subject matter. So that is quite interesting that the working group also offered such training to the DIFC court staff and judges. And the other aspect of the working group is that they are our sounding board, really. So let's say tomorrow, the space disputes guide example, they know better what sort of disputes might happen in space because they're very close to this, let's say, industry. So they really help us in terms of the ideas, the examples. But at the end of the day, we have amazing team members within the DIFC core that do the, let's say, the actual implementation of the project. But the working group is our think tank, our support group, I would say. And they always provide us with strategic insights in terms of raising awareness about this new initiative.
Wow. Just out of curiosity, next to the working group where you said 16 members are there, how big is the group that deals with space within the DIFC courts?
So we are a small court. We are about 33 employees within the courts. Some of us with the technical background, some of us that actually support, let's say, like IT. Actually, we don't call it IT anymore. It's data and digital department. So we are very agile as a court. We are quite diverse, and many of us actually, multitask within the different projects. I would say I'm leading this special project within the Course of Future, Course of Space. I have with me on the working group Ms. Aisha bin Kalban, our Deputy Registrar. So she's the second, let's say, member from the court that is with us within the working group. And apart from that, different, let's say, team members support us as and when needed. So it's really not a lot of people, but our inspiration and our aspiration is to really create that impact that we all need in terms of the space industry for dispute resolution.
Let's talk about potential cases. I mean, you alluded a bit into this direction, but what sort of cases do you expect to arrive before the court? So is that investment, commercial, so this pure, as you said earlier, classical things, or is it ownership, insurance, liability? So what kind of imagination we should apply here for this moment?
So as of today, we can say that all the classical sorts of dispute that can happen on Earth can also actually happen on space, especially as traffic increases more and more with all of the investors. Now the opening of space, that more commercial parties are doing a lot in space. So we can imagine, disputes such as liability, damages, insurance-related claims, and then the usual, let's say, sale of goods if someone has purchased, let's say, items that were supposed to be in space, etc. So all sorts of commercial disputes can and will end up in the courts of space or the DIFC courts. In addition to, of course, sci-fi related, because of course we can't really know what will happen in space once Mars is inhabited, or the moon, etc. with space exploration, space mining. It's unlimited types of disputes that might end up within the DIFC courts of space, and that is why we are urging the community, people who are very much interested in the space industry, to provide us with these ideas, this futuristic example of disputes that might end up in space. Even cargo now is actually going to space. And I know some of our members have experimented in sending sorts of, let's say, different plants, different agriculture into space, and many, many unique projects. So all these types of, let's say, space initiatives or space transactions that are commercial that will end up in space, God forbid, they might end up also in disputes, or let's say the issues happening, right? It's normal. Mm-hmm. The more transactions, the more possibility of having problems along the way. So we are here to support, we are here to resolve those disputes, and that is why we are very much open to hearing from this, let's say, space stakeholders and space players, because we want to provide the best service and the best forum to resolve such disputes if it ever happened. And actually, sometimes you might think having, let's say, a strong mechanism, a strong court system actually avoids or reduces the number of disputes happening. Because before they go to the court, they say, you know what, we know this is a court system that is very strong. At the end of the day, we might lose our, let's say, relationships. Let's resolve it. Let's have a settlement. And that is why we have such strong jurisdictions that support businesses. And actually, there were some studies that were available that we've seen, that the stronger a court system in a certain area or certain country, the stronger the economy. And of course, space economy, space industry is part of economies of many jurisdictions and leading countries around the world.
I see. So things like moot court competition or so, which is typical or space law related, or solving of interesting and also futuristic topics. These are elements that feed into your system, I assume. There's actually, one thing out of
you read our minds. Actually, the next phase of, let's say, after we have Space Dispute Guide number 2, one tentative plan that we have for hopefully 2023 is actually to translate the Space Disputes Guide into a moot court that will be targeted to court, people who are enthusiastic about space industry, who are enthusiastic about space law. So the idea for future in the coming year, 18 months, that will actually end up having a moot court that deals with court disputes that relate to space as well.
I see. Out of curiosity, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer by training, but what occurs to me is that our governance model for the moon, space resources, space mining, you mentioned it before, UAE is leading this path on that area as well, together with Luxembourg and the US, but it's highly disputed worldwide. So can I appropriate ownership of something, of a territory, of resources somewhere? How do you deal with these fundamental questions? Because it's not just a case and everyone agrees to is a baseline system. So we are talking here about the fundamentals. So how do you deal with that? And it might maybe a day-to-day business for you, but for me, it's just something what is absolute or out of my scope.
So the unique landscape of the DIFC court is actually it offers flexibility for, let's say, parties or two businesses that choose the DIFC court in their contract is the choice of law. So they can choose any law from the world, let's say German law, Indian law, American law. But I know that still the laws around the world, at least domestic laws around space, are still being developed, and there are not enough laws out there relating to space. Of course, there are let's say the international treaties that are there. There are international protocols that provide some sort of framework of, let's say, the space industry or the dealings within space. So I would say that the answer is not yet there. Of course, as a court, we apply the law. We don't make law. However, the more space disputes come to the DIFC courts, the more precedent, the more law is created. As you know, like in common law, precedents are used by judges to judge cases. So the idea with the courts of space, if we end up having many parties choose the DIFC court, as a given, law will be actually created relating to such area. But until we have the maturity worldwide of having legislation that deals with space industry, I would say it will be more of a testing mechanism, but a mechanism with the DIFC court that provides the certainty and trust that they need, because we are experts in dispute resolution, and the space players will need to have their trust in exploring such new forums, because arbitration is private and confidential. And people out there and stakeholders that are interested in the space economy, they need to start understanding how issues or how disputes will be resolved. And I would say an open public court that operates within English common law is one amazing, let's say, point to go to.
Great. Are you functional already, or is it still in this? We try to set up, we educate ourselves, we setting the ground. Is it, but if somebody comes and says, okay, I want to resolve my case here in front of you, would it work? And does it also mean that you're international accredited? If that's something what is needed, but I think you mentioned before, you just have to agree, the parties have to agree on the place.
Yes, you're learning, Torsten. So we have been operational since 2004. So that was the year of establishing the DIFC court. However, back in 2011 is the year when we were open to the world, as you mentioned, when two parties from anywhere, if they have a commercial agreement, they can choose the DIFC courts. So you might wonder, what's special about courts of space? I want to tell you that before 2020-21, we were able to receive any dispute relating to space as long as they chose us in their contract and as long as it relates to a commercial or civil dispute. So from 2011, we are open to the world. Any two parties that chose us can come to us. However, I would say the uniqueness or the twist around courts of space is how we can really listen to the stakeholders, how we can provide them with a division, a specialized division that can cater for their needs. Within the DIFC courts, we hear all commercial and civil disputes. And we have certain divisions that are specialized divisions. So we have technology and construction division. We have digital economy court division that has been established a few months ago. Another interesting and exciting project that we have that deals with all of the hype around NFTs, blockchain, cryptocurrency. And of course, courts of space is still, as I mentioned, a toddler. We're still trying to understand whether a specialized division is needed on the ground. However, from 2011 to date and in the future, even if we don't have a division created, we can and will hear space-related disputes. Actually, a few years ago, we have at least 2 or 3 cases that relate to satellites in space that were disputes. However, they came from arbitration, and that is why they are not the public cases. So since many years ago, we already had cases relating to space industry.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm learning, or I try to learn in my limits that I have. I would like to jump to. I would like to jump to a few of these wonderful questions from our audience here. So, Mark, we try the same with law made in Germany, but it's state court. How can we create a framework for civil and public courts without forum shopping?
So I'm sure Mark is maybe lawyer by background.
He is.
And forum shopping, maybe some of our audience are not aware of it. So forum shopping means, let's say I feel that I might lose the case. I start choosing different jurisdictions or different forums to try my case. And I will choose the place that I think I will actually be, that I would benefit from. So I would say it depends again on each jurisdiction, what aspirations, what strategy they need in terms of the development of their court systems or the different industries that they're focused on. So within the UAE, we are a court that is special, that is really focused on saving business relations. Our procedures, our rules are very flexible, that we always enhance the procedures as we go. And we are really a customer-centric court. We deal as a court more as a service rather than a court building as a place. So we are really within our DNA. We look into how we continue improving our different courts within the DIFC courts. In addition, how we can listen and gain feedback from our lawyers and our business stakeholders, and of course, individuals. I hope that answered your question, Mark.
We will see. I mean, a follow-up question of him is, do you think that private courts should create international laws themselves? I think he is referring to the guidebook you're creating, what can obviously then applied.
So as a rule of thumb, courts do not ever get involved into legislation or creating of law. However, of course, like common law courts or even civil law courts, with judgments, they create case law. So case law and civil systems are more of an example, more of a, let's say, a reference to the judges and the lawyers. However, in common law, precedents are binding on the judges and the lawyers that are practicing within the common law jurisdiction. So I would say we cannot create legislation directly, but through precedents, case law is created. And that is an important point you mentioned, Torsten. Through the Space Disputes Guide, we don't actually announce, let's say, a hypothetical judgment. We were very, let's say, smart in avoiding issue a ruling or a judgment that is, even though, let's say, an example in the Space Disputes Guide, because we don't want to, let's say, give by mistake any implication or indication that this is what will happen in the court once a judgment is issued. So in the Space Disputes Guide, we only show from the time of creating a case until before judgment how things will span out. In addition, in Space Disputes Guide number 2, examples of the disputes that can happen in space. It's only scenarios. So we'll never issue, let's say, a hypothetical judgment, because we want to avoid confusing the audience, and we do not want to create judgments that people look into as a benchmark or let's say, a precedent.
I see. I would like to end with 2 questions we got from Ronald. So what are the top 3 unique selling points for choosing the DIFC over the court or arbitration? I think that's easy. So for you.
Top 3 points is that it is a neutral jurisdiction. So any 2 parties from around the world can safely choose the DIFC jurisdiction, since our judgments are fully enforceable around the world, because we believe we are one of the most connected courts in the world, because we are a common law court. All other common law jurisdictions honor our judgments, and we are part of the UAE, so all international enforcement treaties that the UAE has entered into, we are also a part of. And last but not least is our relationships with other jurisdictions, whether judicial systems, court systems, or public and private sector. We really invest a lot in awareness and training and really outreach and making sure that different stakeholders are aware of the courts. The second reason that someone might choose us is the transparency and the public proceedings that actually happen within the courts. As a court system, we are quite technologically advanced. All our cases are live streamed. And I do understand that within the space industry, there is a lot of hunger around showing the different stakeholders, the businesses, the types of disputes that might happen in space. Because with arbitration, it's closed and no one really knows what happens. However, with court system, it's public and transparent. Another angle of coming to the DIFC court is the choice of laws. It's quite open. You can choose any law you like. And of course, the English language. Of course, since, space, I would say transactions are quite international. You might have one party speaking a certain language, the other party another language. So they need to come into, let's say, a common grounds, a language that they all understand. And of course, English is one of the international languages around the world. The list goes on, not just three. Many reasons why people can choose, or let's say party choose the DIFC court, but I highlighted three main aspects. The precedents in terms of the common law jurisdiction. People understand or anticipate the outcome before entering the court. Second of all, as the neutral location, the neutral court, neutral practices and the rules of the court. And the third point is the English language, of course.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Heinz. I mean, for me, it was at least a buy-in. The second question of him, and that will be then our final one, because we get the yellow flag already from the production team. What is your experience of ruling being enforced, or what happened if a settlement is proposed, ruled, but one party does not agree?
So I mentioned earlier that our court system promotes settlement. Actually, the way how the court case progresses from initial claim up to case management, up to pre-trial review and trial, most parties end up settling because they understand the list of issues. Mm-hmm. So it's quite an environment that promotes settlement. And if one party, and actually furthermore, our rules, we have justice by reconciliation. Let's say the judge realized that the matter is not legally complex, but it's more of miscommunication, most maybe of emotional issues between the two sides. They will actually order them to go and explore mediation and settlement efforts, and then come back to the courts in case they don't succeed. But of course, at the end of the day, if not both parties agree, no one can force the two sides to settle. But believe me, the way how the procedures are orchestrated, most of the time, if they realize that settlement is better and easier and faster and less costly from going into trial and a dispute, they always ending up with the settlement.
Great. Amna, thank you very much. I learned a lot from you. I'm very grateful to have you here in our session. And with that, back to Chiara. And maybe we have some slides or not. We just do it without. Let's see. Hey.
Yay, we have slides. And also, thank you so much. I have to agree with Torsten. I also learned a lot today. Before we leave for today, I'd like to give a brief rundown of our next exciting events. So this week, Thursday, we have our next Space Law Breakfast with Stephen Freeland, where he and his guests will be looking back to the fundamental reasons of why we regulate space and the importance of maintaining peaceful uses of outer space. So tune in for that one. Then on the 24th of May, we have our next 33 Minutes with Crystal Azelton of the Secure World Foundation. And on the 27th of May, we'll have our next Space Café Brazil by the wonderful Ian Grossner, which will be in Portuguese. Then on the 31st of May, we have our 33 Minutes with Adnan Al Owais of Turaya.
So I'm staying in Dubai, no, in Abu Dhabi
Yes.
in this case. Yeah, that is.
You're very region specific for this month, huh? And then on the 1st of June, we'll kick it off with the next Space Café Italy, by the wonderful Dr. Emma Gatti. All events are going to be online on Eventbrite. And as always, we love to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to sign up for our daily or our bi-weekly newsletters. And if you want to treat yourselves to something special, become a Space Watcher today or help us out in the supporter program. Again, huge thank you to you, Amna, for this inspiring and insightful talk and for being our guest. And a huge thank you to the entire team behind the scenes for doing that great job week in and week out. I hope that you all stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for asking all your questions. And I hope to see you in our next events. And in the meantime, visit our website, follow us on social media, and don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Thank you.